I will show you how the biology of your soul uses death to generate an unshakable life in just 6 stages of consciousness. The cost of resisting the end of a cycle is stagnation. While you try to hold on to what has already died, you prevent your new self from breathing. With 4 decades of observing nature and the spirit, I've learned that the pain of dissolution is not an error, but a design. You might feel like you are breaking, but in reality, you are simply becoming fluid enough to pass through the portal of your spiritual awakening. The first step toward this living spirituality takes less time than a breath of surrender. Perhaps you arrived here carrying the weight of an ending, a relationship that fell apart, a career that lost its spark, or an identity that no longer fits in the mirror. It's common to feel that these losses are failures, but life, in its silent wisdom, operates through a sacred process called apoptosis. In biology, apoptosis is programmed cell death. It's not an accident, but a necessity for the organism to stay alive. In the field of self-knowledge and personal development, this is the alchemy of the soul. As Rumi said, "Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure." Today, I invite you to look at what is departing not as a loss, but as the fertile soil for your awakening of consciousness. This dissolution we fear so much is not a mistake of life, but the beginning of a sacred engineering that operates at the root of our existence, where the death of one form is the only fertilizer for the birth of a new consciousness. Often, we mistake the end of a cycle for the end of our existence. However, nature teaches us that life is a continuous flow of contraction and expansion. Cellular apoptosis shows us that, for a hand to form in the mother's womb, the cells between the fingers must disappear. Without this programmed death, the functionality of life would be impossible. In the realm of the spirit, the same happens. Carl Jung reminded us that no oak tree grows without the seed that originated it being completely annihilated. You are not being destroyed by circumstances. You are being refined. This is practical spirituality, recognizing that the self you built to survive until now may not be the self needed for your next stage of evolution. Symbolic death is the invitation for your essence, free of masks, to finally occupy the space. But this transformation does not occur through effort or struggle. It requires a silent intelligence that our own cells already master, the art of letting go with purpose, allowing the biology of detachment to teach us what real surrender means. Surrender is not a passive resignation, but an act of biological courage. The cell that enters apoptosis does not fight the process. It dissolves into small vesicles that will be reused by the body. It understands that its individuality serves a greater purpose, the health of the whole. Here we find an echo in the ancestral African wisdom of Ubuntu. I am because we are. In Bantu philosophy, life belongs not only to the individual, but to the flow of ancestry and nature. When you agree to let go of an old version of yourself, you are honoring the flow of life that wishes to express itself through you. Detachment is opening your hands from an invisible knot that bound the heart. It is understanding that your real presence only emerges when you stop fighting against impermanence. However, between the act of letting go and the new blooming, there exists a territory of absolute silence and apparent chaos, a stage where form is completely lost before finding itself. Between the caterpillar and the butterfly, there is a stage we rarely discuss. The moment the caterpillar dissolves inside the cocoon. It is no longer a caterpillar, but not yet a butterfly. It is, literally, an enzymatic soup, a raw material without form. This is the moment of existential crisis, the dark night of the soul. In this stage, the feeling is one of paralysis and deep confusion. Jung would call this nigredo, the blackening phase necessary in alchemy for transmutation. It is a fertile void. Inhabiting this confusion without trying to escape it is the secret of spiritual awakening. It is in the silence of this non-being that new structures begin to organize. If you feel lost today, know that you are simply in the laboratory of the invisible, where your new form is being matured. And it is exactly in this state of dissolution that something extraordinary reveals itself. Even in the dark, the map of your future is already drawn, working in the silence of what you cannot yet see. Even when the caterpillar is just soup, there are groups of cells called imaginal discs that already carry the complete blueprint of the butterfly. They survive the dissolution and use the energy of what died to build wings and antennae. This teaches us that your future does not depend on something external, but on a design that already inhabits your soul. In the silence of your inner path, while nothing seems to be happening in the world outside, your consciousness is reorganizing the fragments of your experience to create a new reality. As the African proverb says, silence is also a song. Do not rush your rhythm. Trusting in this invisible process is what sustains the journey of authentic personal development. This trust leads us to the heart of the paradox. We finally understand that transformation does not happen despite what fell apart, but precisely because of what we allowed to depart. We often ask, why did this have to end? The paradox is that transformation does not happen despite death, but because of it. The building material of what is remade is exactly what was undone. Without the breaking of old defenses and limiting beliefs, there would be no substance for the new consciousness to manifest. Rumi taught us that the wound is the place where the light enters. Resistance to the end of cycles is what generates unnecessary suffering. When we stop seeing the crisis as a punishment and start seeing it as an invitation, pain transforms into silent wisdom. You are not being punished by the universe. You are being invited to participate in your own creation. With this new perception of the losses that sustain your flight, I invite you now to silence the external noise and enter the laboratory of your own soul. We have reached the laboratory of the soul. Look at your life today and identify what has already fulfilled its role and now asks to depart. What fear or defense do you still carry that no longer serves your flight? Breathe deeply for a moment. Imagine that every exhale is an act of surrender, letting go of the dry leaves of the past. Feel the space opening up in your chest. This void is not absence. It is the womb of the sacred waiting for your new form. And what if the dissolution you fear so much today is, in fact, the only path to the freedom you have always sought? Remember, the soul is in no hurry. It has rhythm. If these words touched something inside you, perhaps it is time to take one more step on this path of reuniting with your inner truth. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that nourishes the soul with presence and authenticity. Share in the comments what resonated with your heart. Your story might be the mirror someone else needed to find. If you seek a safe harbor, know that our community is the sanctuary where fertile silence is shared and deepened. Enjoy the posts on the channel. And to keep expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video pinned in the card. May it be a source of inspiration on your journey. Peace and light.